Hello, and welcome to another episode of Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannan. Let's deal with the time proofs for the existence of God. Now, this is a category of arguments to prove the existence of God based on the mechanics of how time works. Now, uh, the idea of how time works is a debatable question. Uh, no one has ever presented scientific proof of exactly how it is that time works. So, to an extent, this is really just logical deduction and philosophy. But it makes a lot of sense, and I'll explain it to you. Now, time is the movement and energy of the universe. If things didn't move, you wouldn't know they were there. It's the movement and the rearrangement of things through time uh, that shows that they even exist to begin with. So, time is critical to the existence of material reality. Without time, material reality doesn't exist. So, what specifically is time? What is it? It's a change, sure. It's movement, it's energy. It could be stored movement. Uh, but specifically, what is it? Now, it's a dimension, but it's an unseen dimension. For instance, if you are traveling near a very massive object, that object will slow your relative time down under the theory of general relativity, which will result in you accelerating, your velocity going up. And we feel that as gravity. So uh, the dimension of time and the dimensions of space have a limit, which is the speed of light. So as your time slows down, your velocity has to increase because they're inversely proportional and they equal to the speed of light. So this is proven under Einstein's theory of general relativity. So, in a sense, time is very much a dimension through which we constantly move, but it's an unseen dimension. It's not like space that you can see. You can see up, down, sideways, forward, backwards. Time you can't see. It's invisible. It's an invisible dimension. But you can see it in the sense that things move, so you can see it that way. But it very much acts like a dimension. Uh, so that's why Einstein calls it space time. And that's why we have this whole idea about geodesics through space time, as opposed to simple three dimensional space, which was the older understanding of what space was, basically a backdrop upon which things occur. But we now know that that's not true. It's actually space time. And there is this actual dimension, invisible dimension of space. Of time, I'm sorry. So it's a much more complicated picture, but it's more accurate. So, what is time? Well, time is change, it's movement. And if you think, in a general fashion, on the lowest levels of the movement of things, what exactly is going on there? Say, for instance, you've got a thing, and then it's moving. So, some moment of time later, it's in a different location. Now it's over here. Uh, some moment of time later, it's moved some further, in a different location. It's over here. So, what exactly is going on here? How does it do this? How does it move like that? Now, you may not think that that's a problem, but It actually is. How does that happen? Uh, there's a ancient classical paradox called Zeno's paradox, and it highlights the problem with movement itself. And Zeno said that, well, from point A to point B, there's always a midpoint C. So if you want to go from point A to point B, you always have to travel through the midpoint C. But before you can go from A to B, you got to go from A to C. And for the distance between A and C, there's always a midpoint D. And then you can keep doing this. You could say, well, to get from A to C, you got to first go from A to D. But between A and D, there's also a midpoint. You got to go to there first. That's E. And you can keep doing that infinitely. So there's always a midpoint that you have to travel through first before you can go the full length. So because there's an infinite number of midpoints, you can never go through an infinite number of midpoints. So how is movement even possible? Won't you be stuck going through an infinite number of midpoints and you'll never make it all the way over here to B? This is Zeno's paradox. So what explains this? Well, what explains this is that time is quantized. And quantized means time comes in indivisible, discrete units at the lowest levels of time. So this Zeno's paradox is solved by these quantized smallest moments of time. They can't get any smaller, and you simply skip from one moment to the next, to the next, to the next. Like that. So there's no in between these quantized times. There's no in between. Now I know that that idea itself is it's got its own problems to try to visualize that because you can't. But that's really the solution to Zeno's paradoxes. It's quantization. It's what modern physics is based on. Quantum mechanics is based on. Is the idea of quanta, uh, um, indivisible, smallest units. Now, I know some people will argue that that's not true and that time is infinite and can be infinitely divided into an infinite number of prior moments. Well, I've already did a video on that explaining why that's a problem, and I think that's logically impossible. Uh, Quantization makes much more sense. So essentially, in time, you have this jump between quantums of time. So when a thing is moving like that, it's jumping. What does that mean? What it means is not only is it moving in space, it's also moving in time, and that requires that the thing itself um, disappear and then it's recreated someplace else. That's how a jump is made. So on the smallest levels, things are disappearing and then being recreated in the next jump, and that's how things move. That's how time moves. Um, so that's an interesting observation about time and movement. It requires a destruction of a thing and its recreation. And this offers the opportunity to provide a proof for the existence of God. This is what I call uh, the time proofs for the existence of God. A very basic philosophical idea that you need to understand is the idea that you can't get something from nothing, or that from nothing comes nothing. It's an ancient classical truism, philosophical truism, um, uh, and it's really a fundamental um, premise of the time proofs. So, and it's obvious and it's common sense, uh, but I suppose there's some atheists who want to argue with this. The idea is you can't get something from nothing. From nothing comes nothing. Its Latin version is ex nihil nihil fit. Uh, all right. So time is the creation, destruction, and recreation of a thing at relative rates. That's what time is. So, as I previously explained to you, that's how things move through time. Things exist, they're destroyed, they're recreated at different relative rates. That's why we have general relativity. That's how uh, things move through time. So, this very notion requires the creation, destruction, and recreation of things in time. Well, how is that possible? How can something uh, exist, then not exist, and then exist again? Um, Nothing is not capable of doing that. Nothing from nothing comes nothing. You can't get something from nothing. So, nothingness is not an explanation for this process of movement through time. There's nothing material that is capable of creating, destroying, and recreating things. Uh, Such a thing would be subject to time, but we're talking about something that is not subject to time because it's responsible for the creation of time. So, something that creates time cannot be subject to time. All material things are subject to time. So, there's no material explanation for how this can occur, how something can appear, disappear, and then reappear. It's got to be an uncaused metaphysical cause, which we call God. So there has to be a God in order for there to be time, space, and the movement and energy of the universe. So God must be real in order to first, A, create, destroy, and recreate things which cannot be caused by nothing. And another reason, the other reason is God is necessary in order to remember the prior order, placement, and time flow of things in order to recreate them with a new order, placement, and time flow, which cannot be caused by nothing. So, as things move and they're recreated in a slightly different order, placement, or time flow, there has to be something that can remember the prior placement, order, and time flow in order to recreate the thing in the right place, order, or time flow. Essentially, this is what we call the laws of physics. Essentially, the behavior of matter through time, behavior of matter and energy through time. But there has to be something that remembers the prior placement, order, and time flow in order to recreate it correctly in accordance with the laws of physics. That thing that remembers what happened just before. You can't recreate it in the proper order, placement, and time flow unless there's some way to remember the prior placement, order, and time flow. But something cannot come from nothing. A memory like that cannot come from nothing. But it's not. But the memory itself is not subject to time because it's creating time. That recreation of things through time is time itself. It's the creation of time. So this thing can't be subject to time. It's creating time. But it has to have that memory. Otherwise, how do you know where to recreate things? How can time flow? So this thing that's remembering the prior placement, order, and time flow of things outside of time is God. It's another proof that God must be real. So uh, this is the time. These are the time proofs for the existence of God. And if you think about movement and time flow and the need for something to remember prior movement, placement, and time flow in order to recreate that, and the simple act of recreating something, it all can't come from nothing. But it can't be something that is material, subject to time. It can't be a material process because it's the creation of time itself. So it has to be an uncaused metaphysical cause, which we call God. If you have any questions or comments about the time proofs for the existence of God, leave them below and I'll address them. Otherwise, please press the subscribe button. I appreciate it. And think about this, and you'll realize that a God must be real in order for time to be created. There has to be a God. Can't come from nothing. All right, take care.